What's up, everyone? Marcus of Cradle here, and today we're going to be answering the question, why does this song have 133 tracks? This is not only a fun little way to show how a song might be layered and mixed, but also a self-rationalization of why I have this many tracks in it. I think it's reasonable, but lay it on me in the comments if you disagree, and let me know if you think this is too many tracks. Let's dive in. So here I've got the top level of just the groups or the buses of tracks. So this is sort of where I have my sub mixes set up. So right off the bat, you can see that one of the reasons there are so many tracks is that these top level ones add another little layer. So there's not actually audio directly on these tracks. It's just that there are lots of other tracks kind of feeding into them. And then by just adjusting the levels here, I can adjust the volume of all of those drum tracks instead of needing to do it on each individual one. So that's the same for all of these group tracks here at the top level. When I dig into the drum track, you'll see that we've got, how many? 31 drum tracks, including the bus level itself. The next excuse or reason here for adding so many tracks is the layering of the drums. So if we just listen here, this was the drums that we started with using a battery kit from Contact. So just hearing those here in the chorus, this is sort of the main drum sounds that we started with. That's 7 tracks here. These are all separated out, so instead of having the drums all on one track, I want to be able to mix the kicks, snares, hi-hats, that sort of thing separately. So we have those set up as multi-outputs here so that I can control them more granularly. The next thing we did, so that's 7 tracks right there. And then the next thing we did was layer additional drum sounds on top of those to add a little bit of variety and space to those drum hits. So I'm talking about layering an additional snare sound on top of the snares that we had, an additional, hi-hat or kick sound on top of those, just to get a different sound out of it. So hearing those layered in, let's take a listen. So it just adds a little bit of variety and movement to the drum pieces by layering in those additional, 7 drum tracks. So again, it doesn't really change the overall drum part, if you will, but it fills it out and adds more sounds and textures to that drum part, and just makes it more interesting part, in my opinion. The next layers that we have in the percussion section, bunch of them are just for a single hit at the very beginning, this sort of massive impact sound. So all those super punchy sounds, that's all just for one sound. Nothing else happens on those tracks for the rest of these songs. So it's just there. So that's 5 right there. The next ones, these are all transition sounds, sort of effect sounds. So I'll go to the busier part here of the song as far as those transitions go. So you can hear those soloed here. Got some risers, some impacts, and then some extra little delays you'll hear. So those are all happening at the same time. Let's hear it with everything else added in. And then a shaker added into in those later choruses. And then a little backbeat sort of thing, or just a little extra rhythm section here with a little block hit. So that's happening on the drums and how we got to 31 tracks on the drums alone. Next up, we have the basses. So let's see what excuses I have here for why I have so many tracks. So here we only have 5, relatively few compared to the drums that we just walked through. But why do we have 5? Let's see. So first, we just have the verse bass part here. Not much else to say there. It's just a single bass part, running that through Contact and Guitar Rig. And then once the chorus comes in, it's on a different track. Let's see why. So it's a different bass. So this is more of a sub bass, a sub synth bass versus that scarby real bass style VST that we're using for the verse. So I put those on separate tracks, wanted to treat them differently. They're different sounds, and wanted to give myself more flexibility on mixing those by putting them on separate tracks. And then jumping over to the bridge, we can see that we've added 2 more bass tracks. Let's see what's going on there. So this is similar sound to the chorus. Yep, it's actually the same sub bass there from Contact. However, it's got different volume than the chorus bass, and then we also have it layered with a higher octave. So the bridge here is more sparse. So the chorus layer, that bass actually follows a melody from one of the synths during the chorus part. However, that synth does not happen during the bridge. So to kind of fill out the bass and make that melody a little more audible, especially on different speakers, I've taken that same bass line, put it up an octave or so. What is that? Yeah, just 1 octave, and cut out the low end there, just so that it has some content higher up on the frequency spectrum, lets it punch through a couple different speakers there. So when we layer those together, again, kind of cutting out some of the lows on the higher octave and treating that lower one just slightly differently than what we see in the chorus. You can also see that the EQ curve over here is a little different from those tracks. Just gives me a way to more easily switch between editing how the bass should feel during that bridge part versus how it should feel during the chorus part without having to rely on automation for changing those. And I can instead just change it on each separate track. So anytime I have different parts of the song and I know I'm going to treat them a little differently, if it's just a small tweak, then I'll use automation to change between that, like something like a gain automation. But if I know that I might want to mix it differently, that's often when I'll duplicate the track and start to make those changes separately on that new track, even if it's the same instrument. And then we also have this other little track added at the end of the bridge. So what's happening here with this bass line? Yep, so this one, it was taking that VST bass and putting a pitch dive on it. So it's doing a slide down there. And to get that smooth, I was just running into it was sounding a little glitchy as I was trying to do it on the VST itself. So I just put the effect on, bounced it down to audio, and then didn't have any issues after that. So if I'm doing something and I'm having trouble with CPU keeping up, or it's glitching for whatever reason during playback, sometimes you can solve that by bouncing it down to its own audio track. And that's exactly what I've done here. So while these are VST tracks, this one is a separate track because I've put it as audio and needed to put it on its own track because of it. The next one, so track 38 here, is also just a bus track. So this is summing the synths and electric guitars. So I wanted to do some effects on all of that instrumentation in the synths and guitars sections. So to most easily do that, I fed them both to this bus track so that I could affect them all at once. That way, I didn't have to do both the effects on the synth bus and electric guitar bus separately. I could just do them all at one time on this one track. The next one here, so 39 through 56. What is that? 17. so I think, yeah. So, yeah, 17 tracks for our synths. So what is going on here? Let's see. So one, we've got several different sounds. So we've got different sounds for different parts. We've got this sort of sci-fi part. We've got another little fill part here during the verses. Then we've got this part here. This little arpeggiated part. And then some little fills. So those are all just different sounds. And yeah, these ones might be, again, like an octave layer. What am I doing there? Nope, these are also different sounds. Okay, so yeah, we've got different sounds happening for all of those, getting slightly different textures. So let's actually zoom in on why we have different sounds. So let's see what's happening on here on these fills. So that's one. So different styles in those layers, kind of making the whole sound on its own. So let's hear them together. So those are two different personalities, if you will, to the sounds. And the overall sound that I wanted, I just got by combining those. So if there is a certain sound you're going for, you know, sometimes you might be layering those different sounds on the same exact part, the same exact melody to get that sound that you have in mind. That's exactly what we're doing there. Let's take a look at this part. So this is the chorus. What's happening? Why do we have all these? This is the part that I mentioned earlier. It's following the bass line, so that's kind of filling up some of the frequency spectrum higher up, so you can kind of hear the bass melody. It's just on a different instrument here with this dark hammer track. Next up, what do we have here? Little ethereal type sound following the same thing. Almost a white noise type synth there. And then we've got these thicker parts, kind of more the mids, low mids in these parts here. And while we're layering all these, so you know, these are all on their own, and that's what we were just isolating to look at. But when you're thinking of them in a whole, you can see that we're also starting to mix these or let them handle a different part of the frequency spectrum. So, you know, I know the bass is carrying the low end of this melody here on the first one. And so I'm cutting a lot of those lows so that it doesn't compete with it there. It doesn't build up too much on certain frequencies. And then same here, this one's kind of that ethereal one. Really just wanted it for that sparkly ethereal piece of it. So that's why we see it mostly just in that upper range. Same with the white noise. You can see that's cut up pretty high here. Whereas these pieces here, allowing a little more of that low end to creep in, still leaving room for the basses. And also these are layered with not the synths, but these are corresponding to the guitar parts that are happening at the same time, which take up some of the lower range here. So I'm also kind of thinking of some of these in the context of how are they pairing up with the guitars. So that's a lot of them. Further, we've got some other new synths there in the bridge. Again, just different parts. And then some other effects added, not effects, but other synths added here in the final chorus, along with some extra little automation, adding some cool movement there just to add that build in the final chorus. So just some other parts added there to spice up the sound, add some excitement to it as it builds into the final part of the song. So that's how we got to 56. Let's take a look at what we have in tracks 57 through 71. So the guitars, we have, I already mentioned a little bit how they pair up with the synths in some part. So you can see part of it is going to be, one, there's just some different guitar sounds. So we've got our verse happening here. It's layered with another one. Playing the same part, just panned left to right. And then we've got these little risers. And then it goes into the chorus, having more of a rhythm section, followed by this little riff part here. And these form a little bit of a call and response with the synths that I mentioned earlier. So part of the reason for separating these is I kind of think of them as two separate parts. You know, this is kind of part A, this is part B. So in my head, it's just easier to treat them separately, mix them separately, handle the volumes separately, especially when I'm pairing them up with the synths. The other part that is happening here, why we have so many, is getting some thickness to it. So you can see I'm playing the same part for these and just thickening it up. So one is panned center, One is panned left, playing the same thing, but recorded separately. Same thing with the main riff, but also playing them at different octaves. So we've got 4 different layers here, panned far left, right, really filling out the width of the sound. You know, versus just the high layer, add the lows in. Just really fills it out, thickens it up, and gives you that punchy and full guitar sound that we end up with. So a lot of just layering for the guitars, adding to our track count here. Next up, we've got 72 through 97. So a lot of vocal tracks. Part of that is, what are my excuses here? Okay, so yes. So one, we have 2 singers. So we have 2 different vocalists, me and I.AM.EM on this track. So right off the bat, I'm separating those out into different tracks because I'm mixing them differently because we have different voices. The other thing, I have some like vocal chops added here just on their own tracks. This is a track that's actually muted that I used to build those. So that's more of a stepping stone track, something I use to build another sound. Other ones, let's see, we've got some just fills and chops here that we're using in the last chorus. So a lot of that's happening in this group of tracks. Next up in the main vocals that we're working with, kind of a similar structure here on both vocalist parts here. So my vocals are all here, and then I.AM.EM's vocals are all here. So what's happening is I've separated out the verse from the chorus lead vocal. So here are the kind of lead parts here. And I like separating those out to let me more easily adjust the volume without needing to remember that I'm doing automation on that. And then also, you know, I'll mix those a little differently. So for example, my verse vocal has a couple specific types of, you know, delays that I'm throwing in there, or vice versa. You know, I might be doing some different delay throws on each one or having different effects happening on each one in those parts. And then I may add more or less distortion or change the EQ a little bit in each part. So let's see if that's something we did here. Yeah, just a little bit. So you can see I'm dropping that 1.8 decibels there on the low shelf and also shelving it a little higher up. So mixed slightly differently there for the verse versus chorus vocals. The other layers here are just some kind of ad-libs or different effects that we've layered in. So let's hear some of those. So just a very choppy, kind of monstrous sound, this little whisper, and this high double. So just some little cool layers added in. Put those all on their own tracks because they're different effects that we're doing on each one. The next piece here, the chorus vocals, really have those thickened up with doubles, panned left, right, different effect going up. So these, getting that kind of thick chorus sound here. Hey, honey, hands. Just need a lot of tracks to do it. Doing the same thing on I.AM.EM's vocals or something similar at least. Hey, honey, hands. Are you feeling and separating out her verse as well, just since I'm mixing it a little different, and you can see right off the bat there too, just different volumes as we're hitting each of those. So that's through track 97. Next up in our track count, we've got tracks 98 through 106 as some background chorus ooze. Trying to kill the king of hearts, put a jack in its place. And these are just some really cool harmony layers, and some of them are, you know, as you can see, the doubles just panned left to right, and then we've got different parts as well. So I'll just kind of layer through those here. What have we got? So just different harmony parts with each of those parts doubled and then panning them left, right. So that's how we got to 106. We've got another stack of background vocals. This one's more specifically for the verse section here, along with the bridge. So I've grouped those into this separate bus since they're not really that kind of call and response background vocal harmony in the chorus. So here for these background vocals, let's take a listen. So again, these are just treated differently. So even though they're very similar vocal parts, over here in verse 1, they're playing background to M's vocal. Over here, they're playing background to my vocal, and just separated them out, make it easier to make those changes without worrying about automating them, that kind of thing, just to get them to fit really nicely up against each of our lead vocals in a way that paired nicely with them. So you can see that one's got a little more reverb than we just looked at. Let's see. Yeah. Versus these ones. You want a piece of delicious. So actually, reverb's pretty similar, but yeah, maybe a little delay on those first ones. And then this last section is the background vocals for the bridge. I also put it here, and for the same reasons that I just talked about, separated them out on their own tracks so that I could just treat them more specifically for that bridge section. It's got a few harmonies in there. So get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. Why so? So that brings us to 124 on the track count. Let's see what's in this last group. Here we have our FX track stack. And here we have, this is where I have all of my bus effects. So these are all on auxiliary tracks, and then I've grouped them all here so that I can just control the overall level of the effects if I wanted to. So this is sort of a organization and a little extra control reason for why I've separated these out onto their own tracks, so I can share the same reverb or same delay effects across multiple tracks. That's why I put it on a bus track to begin with. And then having that extra layer here, not only does it help with organization of the project, just visually, but also, you know, if I wanted to turn down the effects overall, I can do that from one fader. Hey, honey, hands, are you feeling lucky? Good for the cuts and glory. So it makes it really easy to do there just from the one fader. I also have another subgroup there for my longer effects, just so that I can carve out a little space in the those longer effects that the vocal can punch through a little better. So so I have both of those going up to one group, and then I'm just having the vocal kind of punch out a pocket in the EQ there, using a dynamic EQ. And then last, we have our master output. I actually do this in a separate session when I'm mastering, but for the videos here, I just take the same chain that I use during mastering and put it into the same session here. So this is just like the stereo output track. But we'll count it here to get to our 133 total. 133 tracks. That's how we got here. Let me know in the comments if you think that's too many, or if you think anything was ridiculous or unreasonable with why we were using all of those tracks in this project. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.